okay, on this mortgage bank is 11.25%, 20-year money. Now, that already is progress. Now, let's assume Mr. Mortgage Bank understands that what I do here is about volume. So he says, I don't need to put more than 1 or 1.5% as a spread on it, because, 1.5% spread on 5 trillion is a lot, isn't it? So, those circumstances, you're now looking at a mortgage at about, I think that's about 13.25%. So, the customer now is getting a mortgage at 13.25, as opposed to 19, 20, 22 before. Okay? So that's progress now. So right now, if you think about it, that person or the individual is now borrowing at approximately, that was what I said, 1.75, right? Yeah, 1.5, 1.75, whatever it is. About, let's say 2%. Maybe something is 2%. Make it a round number. 2% above the risk-free rate. You see, that is, to my mind, a fantastic achievement. Moving from 10% or 12% above the risk-free rate to 2%. Now, the risk-free rate today, we said, is 11. Let's assume the risk-free rate goes down to, say, 5%. Can you see how it is possible for mortgages to become single-digit? You see, that's one. Two, today, interest rates is not on the political agenda. It's not really what we talk about. Most people talk about the exchange rate. The reason for that, to my mind, is what percentage of the populace are exposed to the interest rate? None of them. Now let's look at that from a converse perspective. Let's assume that 80% of the working population had a mortgage. Would interest rates be a political topic? Of course it would be. Because now, your voting public, okay, one of the most important aspects of their pocket is their homes and the mortgages. So when you look at countries and you see them managing interest rates to that low level, there's a reason. You see? So when we start moving our people to that level, you would find that there's a more concentration to ensure that interest rates are always absolutely. You know, the NHF, to my mind, the model was wrong. It was flawed from day one. That's my personal opinion. You cannot have a situation where you say, okay, everybody contribute into a fund, and if from that fund, we'll lend you money to build your houses and lend you money for mortgages. But, oh, by the way, you can't borrow more than 5 million naira. But we'll give it to you at 6%. Now, the interest rate, okay, is unrealistic. Okay? The size of the fund, all right, depending on the number of workers you have, is effectively, it's not limited, but its growth is limited. And then it's being used for two purposes: construction and mortgages. Again, two separate types of businesses. So, to me, I'm not surprised that it's where it is today. In fact, years and years ago, I had advocated that the National Housing Fund be actually restructured into a credit guarantee fund. So the idea basically was that the only way I could see it working, because you see, you need leverage if you're trying to basically scale out. You need leverage. I mean, the fund itself, how much is it? I can't remember, but you know, the size of the fund vis-a-vis what we're talking about. I mean, I just give you an example. 1 million houses, 5 billion naira per house, that's 5 trillion. The fund is a minuscule fraction of that. How can that house the Nigerian populace? I mean, please. So the issue for me was, okay, look, But if they had taken the fund and said, let the fund act as first loss in terms of a capital structure. Now, if you leverage that 10 times, that's about 2 trillion. At least you're beginning to do something. You see, now that 2 trillion would have been 2 trillion of bonds. And then the energy, that fund, all right, with the guarantee, would have now been what is available to absorb losses. So what you have then, where the fund would have been able to work is that so long as the losses are less than the contributions, the fund will continue to grow. Albeit little, but it will continue to grow and be sustainable. And then can support at least some aspect of the housing market. To my mind, I think it's something that we still need to do, but to help with the FMBN in their quest or their restructuring to be the institution that probably finances or provides mortgages for the sort of like lower end of the market. A structure of this nature might be very useful and helpful for them to, so by legally changing that structure, allowing it to work that way, I think then I can see them, having some impact, on the market. The difference, and then when you now sort of walk back and look at NMRC, you see the difference is if you look at NMRC now, NMRC is very similar to what I've just described in the sense that it's got capital, all right, and then it's a consistent issuer of bonds. You see, so the sustainability of NMRC, right, was designed from day one. Okay. Exactly. In fact, I remember when the model first came, it was even designed, for the monies that would come from World Bank to have been used to subsidize the interest rate here. Yes. And we said, if we did that, after lending out the 300 million, what happens? Do we go back cap in hand for another 300? We won't do that. Let's use that to create something that is sustainable for Nigeria. Not something that makes us come back in 6 months' time asking for money again. The model is that we would like it to be, for instance, more of a user-investor relationship. But, when we did the first offer, I think it was a minimum was 100 million. 100 million. But the sort of thing is, it's more, it's more of a market enabler as opposed to something that's there to make profits. Okay. I'm not saying it can't be profitable, okay, but it's more of a market enabler. Yeah, exactly. It's there to assist the market to grow, as opposed to, how profitable can NMRC itself be, if you catch my drift. That's really what we want it to be. It's really to work similar to what like a development finance institution would be. Not 100% in that guise, but it does have an element of, of playing a developmental role. I think, sometimes self-prophecy, can be a very bad thing. I was watching South Africa, who just recently had their elections. Never once did I hear somebody talk about what happens to will business just stop, etc., 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 etc. Or even other countries, Tanzania, and so on and so forth. So I always ask myself, why do we always have this, every 4 years we have this thing that, everything is going to end, and then we have to wait and then start again. It baffles me, to be honest with you. That's one. If something is fundamentally good, that you don't need to be a genius to see that this has great repercussions for the country. Let's even assume that there was a change in government. I'm assuming that the guys who would come in, are not brainless. they would look at this and say, this is very good. I'd say, obviously, continue. Besides, NMRC, which you understand NMRC, is actually a private sector company.
Yeah.
It's just a private sector company within a government-enabled space, if I can coin it that way. You know, so to me, you know, I just wish and I hope that Nigerians in general can just move away from this cyclical, like self-propagating cyclicality of their markets. And when people say things like that, you brush it off, because by the time you consistently brush it off, it becomes a thinking that fades into oblivion. And whether it's an election or not is irrelevant. I mean, I don't think anybody thinks about what's going to happen to this or that because conservatives come, or, you know, the Labour come, or the Liberal Democrats. We move on, you know. So I really hope that can happen. I mean, I know we have our challenges, I know we have our problems, but, you know, some of these things exist because we also, you know, continue to propagate it unnecessarily. So, you know, my view is, you know, government stays, government goes, no skin off our nose. Family-wise, I got 3 kids, you know, and you know, they're not here, they're all, you know, offshore. But you know, I try as much as I can to see them as often as possible, because I know that, you know, there's no part 2 when they're growing up, so I can't rewind it. So when people complain, you're always traveling, I'm always traveling because I have to be with my children too, you know. You know, so, and we you know, we get on, we have a great time, and you know, so far so good.